She like, tell me what you see when you look at me. Pussy wet like tsunami. I go let meet your daddy, cause now you dey boost my adrenaline. Buy many things like instantly. Even if you want Bugatti, take her to my court and sue that thing. See me up Bugatti, yeah, on top. She like so that they on top. Screaming my name, she want tear my cloth. She's not my girl, but it's just my tongue. Oh God, today na Sunday, now my house be a church. She said she love me anywhere me I touch. She bring the pussy, tell me say make a judge. A1, say she love me but she doesn't fuck. Baby please tell me what you on for. Sure you get feeling this or that. I mean we are just feeling each other. Say she love me but she doesn't fuck.
London.
Another banger.
Come here, wait till the water you. Green body make I rock, come yeah. I know you seen your me. I get the money pass your papa. Wait till you want way I know fit do for you. Why you want the boogan one? Share you be kiss down near me. You better drop your body and move sucker. Suffer with this body, make we run, I'm on a low key. Baby, you know me. They get us to go move where you no go. Green, come make a drive your come make a drive this your jalo. Please, baby, allow me. Tip you off with the allow
Welcome everybody. Hope your Sunday is going well.
Post in my bololo, post in my bololo. Please help me, oh, me I don't jam with him, but come here, wait till the water you. Green body make a rock, come yeah. I know you seen your me. I get the money pass your papa. Wait till you want way I know fit do for you. Why you want the boogan one? Share you be kiss down near me. You better drop your body and move. You to the form with this love for fitting, baby, and lend me. I get the bounce for you, you want they do like say, night I know the end. You to the steep, they do like say your waist know the end. You know the end. Oh, you follow my command, baby, do like I do, baby, front and back. Give me boom, back a boom, suffer with this body, make we run, I'm on a low.
Welcome everyone.
You know me, they get us to go move where you no go. Come make a drive your.
Thank you all for joining this training. We're very happy to have you all here.
Keep you off with the alarm. Come here, wait in the water, you. Green body make a rock, come yeah. I know you seen your me. I get the money pass your papa. Wait till you want way I know fit do for you. Why you want the boogan one? Share you be kiss down near me. You better drop your body and move sucker.
Just wait for more people to join and we'll be starting by 2:05.
You know me, they get us to go move where you no go. Breathe, come make a drive your come make a drive this so jalo.
guys are having a wonderful Sunday despite the rain.
Body they throw me like a bono. Body they rise me, I don't know. I say color your brocodo, no good is locodo. Kelly they bossy my bololo. Can make a salute your comodo. Kelly the balance echo. I tell you paper. No go do me Diego. My Maradona. Kelly falapio sueto. I'm a farisa. Kelly your back keep it connected. And I can follow your cresco. Sunday, dame creso. Pay for your waist, and I could pay for your lace. Pay for your waist. Sunday, dame creso. Pay for your waist, pay for your lace. Pay for your waist.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to this another training program hosted by ASAD. My name is Rachel Adamu. I'm calling in from Lagos, and I'm a volunteer at ASAD and a member of the mental health training program. I am very happy to have you here, and I'll be the one anchoring this training program. So guys, please feel free to drop your names and where you're calling from in the chat box. We want to meet you all. And also we have a feedback form that will be dropped in the chat box as well. Please feel free to fill it. We want to know how you guys feel about this training. We want to hear your thoughts and everything. Okay, so firstly, we would like to start with an opening prayer that will be given by Lucy. So Lucy, please, thank you. Help us in prayer. Hi, Lucy.
I think we need to unmute her.
Okay.
Okay, let's pray.
All right.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love and mercies upon us. We ask that you come and dwell with us, be with us as we begin this mental health training today. We pray that stand about our toxic traits and traits. We also pray for the courage to be amen. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you very much, Lucy. So we're going to have like a welcome address that is going to be given by our founder, the founder of ASAD, Mr. Dari Ashobele. Hello, Mr. Dari.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a privilege to have everyone here. So my name is Dari Ashobele, founder of ASADS. It's a privilege to have every single one of us here. So just a quick one. So ASADS is a subgroup under Executives Open Initiative. We're a mental health organization based in Lagos, Nigeria. And we really have amazing volunteers from different parts of the world. So it's a privilege to have you guys join us. So, I mean, how did ASADS start, right? So in 2017, I used to personally be suicidal and depressed, and I was able to come out of it. Hence the initiative to start the group, just to be able to help people that are also, struggling with their mental health. And then aside from that, ASADS is just focused on helping people struggling with their mental health. That's either depression or people that are suicidal. Now, still bearing that in mind, ASADS has a WhatsApp forum that has over 1,000 participants across the 4 forums. And then we also have other activities. So for example, we have mental health conversations on Mondays and Fridays on this WhatsApp forum. We also have a Telegram community. Then we also have access to about 12 mental health professionals, local and foreign, that you can always have access to whenever you need help. And then we have an amazing team called ASAD Listeners, which are literally mental health first aiders who you can reach out to for free at no cost entirely. Then we also have other activities. For example, every first Saturday of the month, we have a Twitter space conversation with the Sunshine series based in Abuja. And then every second Sunday of the month, we have this free mental health training that we do just to be able to teach people and for people to know more about mental health so that people can be educated. And every third Saturday of the month, for those in Lagos, we have a physical support group session, right, where everyone signs a non-disclosure, and whatever you say there is confidential at that session. And then we have other activities such as the ASADS store, mental health speaks, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's just it about ASADS. Our goal is just to see how we can reduce mental health issues before 2030. So we have 7 more years to go. And you know, the inspiration for what we do is simple. Every 40 seconds, I don't know if you're aware, someone takes their life globally. And so what that means is that every year you have 800,000 people dying by suicide. And for those of us in Nigeria, because we are based in Nigeria, I know that there are different people from different parts of the world currently on this call. The situation is we are over 200 million in Nigeria, and we barely have up to 1,000 mental health professionals registered, right? And so what that means is that even if we had 1,000 participants, it means one person has to attend to about 200,000 people, which is crazy. There's already pressure. And then aside from that, we have volunteers. And for us in ASADS, we're very structured. Before you can become a volunteer, there are a series of processes because to help people, you need to have skill sets, right? If you don't have a skill set, you can't be able to do it. So for those that might be interested in volunteering with us, you could volunteer with us either for 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. We'll currently be recruiting later on in the month. So make sure you follow us on our social media page. They are currently being dropped in the chat box. So make sure you follow us and to join us. So yeah, please enjoy the session and make sure you learn, practice what you learn, ask questions, feel free, connect with people, and have a wonderful time. So yeah, thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dari. Thank you very much. Please, we can all drop our clapping with the emoji box. And okay, so next I'm going to talk about our presenter. I want to give you guys a brief summary of who our presenter is. So she is a clinical therapist, she's a TEDx speaker, and the founder of SASA. Now, SASA is a company that is dedicated to supporting neurodiversity and mental health in the workplace with an interest in criminal justice. And also, she has made it a mission to educate others on the importance of empathy and mental health. That is our speaker. Wow. So she has made it a mission to educate others on the importance of empathy and mental health in these settings and beyond, as explored through social activism and delivering inspired keynotes for the NHS, Go Catalyst, Oxford Brookes University Career Week, and more. Our passion to share this knowledge in the written form has led to features in Forbes, wow, Fortune, WebMed, and Refinery 29, in addition to being shortlisted for the Merky Book Prize 2023. Wow. Can we all give a round of applause for our speaker? We know for sure that we have a lot of things to learn from her. So I would advise you guys to just prepare to grab as much as you can. I know I'm going to. So before we go into the training proper, I would want us to go on the icebreaker. So that is going to be done by our founder again, Mr. Dari Asobele. So please, Mr. Dari.
All right. Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me and see me. If you can hear me and see me, I also just want to advise everyone that please feel comfortable to show your videos. This is a mental health conference in as much as we're having this conference virtually. So it's a mental health training rather. So show your videos so that people can put a face to your name, get to connect with people, so on and so forth. Very, very important. All right, so if you are present here, I want you to stop whatever you are doing and let's just quickly do these exercises. I know that many of us might either be coming from church, you are stressed, there's so much tension and so on and so forth. So let us be fully present right now. All right, so moving on, I want you all to just take a deep breath in from your stomach. So take a deep breath in from your stomach. Breathe out. Take a deep breath in from your stomach again. breathe out. Now, I want you to take a deep breath in from your stomach, but the condition is this. You will take a very strong deep breath in as I count to 5. Once I count to 5, I want you to hold your breath and I will count to 5 again. And when I am done, you will breathe out, right? So let's do it together. Take a deep breath in from your stomach. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Release. Now let's do it again. Take a deep breath in from your stomach. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Release. Now let's do it one more time. Take a deep breath in from your stomach. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now breathe out. Now I'm going to do it 2 more times, but this is the condition we're going to do it in. Now, when I say take a deep breath in from your stomach, I want you to feel every single emotion that you feel. If you're angry, you are frustrated, maybe the sound of my voice is pissing you or whatever, feel every single thing. But the moment I count that 5, once you breathe in, you have that 5 seconds to breathe in and feel all of those emotions. But the moment I count the next 5 and you breathe out, you have to let go of all the negative emotions that you might feel. Do you get what I'm saying? So let's do it. Now take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now breathe out and release all of those emotions, the negative emotions and so on and so forth. Thank you. Now for the final time, this time around, I want you to feel all these positive thoughts. Many of you self-talk a lot. You say negative things to yourself. But I really want you to be able to say you are amazing, you are beautiful, you are full of life. Say all the positive things about yourself. So as you breathe in, I want you to see all of these positive things about yourself. And the moment I count, then you just breathe out, enjoy and basking in the reality of what you have said about yourself. Now take a deep breath in now. Take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold. Say those things about yourself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now release. All right. Thank you so much. For every single one of you that did that exercise, you will see that you'll be more relaxed in the session. You'll be able to pay attention and you will feel so, so excellent. So over to you, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dari. I actually feel more relaxed, to be honest, and I feel more relaxed and ready. No, I don't know if you guys are ready, but I am ready. And I want you guys to drop, and you can just drop an emoji to show how you feel, or drop it at the chat box. Just let me know how you felt about the icebreaker, because like I said, I feel relaxed. I feel less tense actually. So yeah. So we would like to hear what you guys thought about the icebreaker. So the moment we've been waiting for is here. It is time for us to learn. It is time for us to learn about toxic traits. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us have heard about toxic traits. We've heard people say, oh, this person is toxic. You know, we've heard people call some of us toxic. I've come to realize that a lot of us have like some toxic traits in us, and we don't even know. We don't even count it as being toxic. You get. So, now we're here, we are going to learn about what toxic trait is. We are going to learn how to identify them. We are going to learn how to deal with people that even have toxic traits. I'm sure some of us have even been in situations where we've had to deal with toxic partners and all. So the time is here for us to learn about those things, learn how to deal with them, learn how to deal with our own toxic traits that we have. It's not always every time that the toxic traits are actually the obvious ones. Some are actually very subtle and you won't even know that you have it and all. So like I said, the time is here. It is time to meet our presenter, Jenny Okolo. So she's going to take us on a journey. So Jenny Okolo. Hello, Jenny.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh, I need to first of all say, Dari, that was such an amazing exercise. I feel relaxed myself. I was doing all the breathing exercises with you. But thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And like it was already mentioned, please feel free to ask any questions, put them in the chat, I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk afterwards. But I'm very open to any questions that you guys might have. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. All good? Taking the silence is good. All right then. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's online mental health training session. As it was already mentioned, we'll be talking about toxic traits and how to unlearn them. I'm really excited to share my own personal experiences, but also go through some of the education around toxic traits, how it can impact other people, yourself, and how we can sort of improve ourselves as we learn more around this topic. I hope that by the end of the session that you gain valuable insights, practical strategies for unlearning toxic traits, enabling you to lead happier and healthier lives. So let's dive straight in. Let me see. Perfect. All right, so let's begin by gaining a thorough understanding of toxic traits and their influence on our mental well-being. So toxic traits are patterns of behaviors that are harmful to oneself and others. They can manifest in various different forms, such as manipulation, constant criticism, controlling behavior, emotional volatility. For example, somebody with a toxic trait of manipulation may consistently twist facts or use guilt to gain control over other people. These types of traits can have profound consequences on our mental health, lead to increased stress, anxiety, and deteriorating relationships. Is that me? Okay. So like I said, with toxic traits, yes, we can identify them in other people, but I think it's really important for us to also understand that we ourselves can also be projecting those behaviors, whether we know this consciously or not, okay? So how do we recognize toxic traits? Now that we have a very basic grasp of what toxic traits are, let's focus on recognizing them in ourselves and other people. So identifying toxic traits is a critical step towards unlearning them and fostering healthier behaviors. Signs of toxic traits include frequent gaslighting. So, you might be in a conversation with someone, expressing to them how you feel, and they might sort of put you down constantly. This can be in the act of distorting someone's perception of reality, a lack of accountability. Again, this is really important because it can happen in different types of scenarios. It's something that I've experienced myself in friendship groups where I've brought something up and, instead of the other person maybe taking that in or being willing to have a conversation about it, it's totally dismissed. Excessive negativity and an inability to respect boundaries. So for instance, if somebody's constantly belittling you, dismissing your feelings, consistently disregarding your personal boundaries, all of these things plus more can be indicators of toxic behaviors. Okay, so let's go into some examples of these toxic behaviors and where they can be found in. So manipulation. Manipulation is a toxic trait characterized by using deceit, guilt, or an underhanded tactic to control or influence others for personal gain. Manipulative individuals often exploit vulnerabilities of others, so they might sort of find a pain point in somebody else and take advantage of that. They can twist facts or engage in emotional manipulation to get their way. This type of behavior undermines trust and can have a detrimental impact on relationships. Constant criticism. So constant criticism is another form of toxic trait that's characterized by excessive and relentless finding fault in other people. So yes, there is good criticism. So, I always, when I'm talking with my friends or even in a workplace, I'm always open to critique, and I think everybody should be. But there comes a point where you have constant criticism where it feels like you're maybe being attacked. So that can be the more negative side of things. And people with this type of trait tend to focus more on the negative aspects of others' actions, appearance, their abilities, and again, often belittling and undermining their self-esteem. Controlling behavior. So controlling behavior is, again, another toxic trait that's marked by a strong need for power and control over others. Individuals exhibiting controlling behavior often impose their will onto others, dictating their choices, decisions, and actions. It can exhibit possessiveness, jealousy, or excessive monitoring of other activities. So at the side, I've sort of put some examples that are not limited to, of course, but examples of where these types of behaviors can be found in. So they can be found in romantic relationships. I often, with a lot of my clients and patients that I work with, they have histories of, perhaps emotional, physical abuse. And, the first thing that we sort of discuss is the fact that they weren't necessarily able to see it because they thought that this was somebody that they could trust. This is someone that, was there to provide that safe space for them. So sometimes it can be quite tricky to identify these toxic traits when you're in proximity with somebody that you care about. Same with friendships in the workplace. So that could be your manager or your colleague, family as well. So that's a tricky one, family, because again, these are the people that are supposed to be protecting you. These are the people that, you love and support. And again, it's sometimes it's hard to identify these types of behaviors, or a lot of us might overlook these toxic traits because of who they are. Strangers as well. So again, this could come in the form of, if you're a high profile person or you're on social media, you might come in contact with a troll or somebody who doesn't necessarily know you, but again, it's exhibiting those negative types of behaviors towards you. Your mentor as well, and much more. So again, I just wanted to highlight the fact that these toxic behaviors can be found in anyone. It can be found in yourself. It can be found in somebody that you feel close to. And, it doesn't necessarily make them a bad person, but I think it's really important for us to be able to identify that so that it doesn't get to the point of, it being so detrimental to your mental health and also the relationship that you have with each other. Okay. So where does this all stem from? With toxic traits and just behavioral characteristics in general, they must stem from somewhere. And toxic traits can stem from various factors, including personal experiences, upbringing, social influences, and underlying psychological issues. So we're just going to go into some common sources or contributing factors to toxic traits. All right, so childhood experiences. Negative experiences during childhood, such as trauma, abuse, neglect, or inconsistent parenting, can shape a person's beliefs, behaviors, and coping mechanisms. These experiences can lead to the development of toxic traits as individuals adopt a maladaptive way of interacting with others and protecting themselves. So when we're looking at psychology in general, like the formative years of a young child are usually the most important. Okay, because that's the point where they're absorbing everything and anything, whether it's the negative parts or the more positive parts. Babies, toddlers, and young children are like sponges. So again, this is quite important to factor in when you are encountering someone with a toxic trait, or if you're looking at yourself trying to identify, why is it that I'm like this? Have I always been like this? Did this come from somewhere? So it's also quite important to look at, how did this person grow up? Did they grow up in a toxic environment where, the way their parents spoke to them might have been in a negative way, might have been in a belittling way. So that's all they really know, And of course, I think it's also important to highlight that whilst things might happen in people's childhood experiences, that not everybody sort of grows up to understand that, this isn't the right way of doing things. Like, everyone processes things in different ways. And again, this is something that is a huge conversation in the mental health space, because, a lot of us have gone through things in life, but we all come out in different ways, right? Some people get over it, some people heal, some people are able to sort of push through, whereas other people might go in a different direction. Learned behavior. So individuals may learn toxic traits from their environment, such as observing toxic behaviors in their family. So very similar to what I've just described before, their peers, so friends or role models. So these people might internalize and imitate these behaviors, thinking that they are normal or effective ways of dealing with life challenges. Okay, so for example, you might have a young boy with a father who, tends to shout at them a lot, doesn't necessarily take in what the child's feelings are, and that child then grows up to become a man, maybe get married or have friends, and again is exhibiting those same types of behaviors. Cultural and social influences. So cultural norms, societal expectations, and social pressures can contribute to the development of toxic traits. For example, certain cultures or social groups may endorse toxic masculinity, which encourages aggressive behavior, emotional suppression, or dominance. These influences can shape somebody's individual beliefs and behaviors. So, when we talk about toxic masculinity, for example, it's not a secret that, one of the main, traits or behaviors that we tend to see is that, the man is supposed to be the head of the household, the man is supposed to take everything on. And all these types of cultural and social influences, I would say as well, can be quite toxic in itself, because generations and generations down the line, the more we sort of put people in categories of how they're supposed to behave, how they're supposed to interact with other people, some people can turn that into more of a toxic trait where they're not able to shift from that belief. They're not able to keep up with the changes in society and all that kind of stuff. And then again, because of that frustration of, maybe not being able to take care of your family, or, let's say, for example, having your life together by the age of 25 or by the age of 30, that's something I've experienced as well, where it's like, I'm 25, I'm 30 years old, and I haven't been able to achieve certain things that I wanted to achieve. So that disappointment might show up in the form of aggression, show up in the form of, not being nice to other people because you're not nice to yourself, So mental health issues. Again, this is a massive one that tends to get overlooked. A lot of toxic traits might be linked to underlying mental health conditions. So for example, individuals with narcissistic personality disorder, some people might just refer it to PD, so personality disorder in itself, might exhibit toxic traits such as grandiosity, a lack of empathy, and manipulative behavior. So for example, they might not be able to either relate to others or comprehend that, you know, somebody else might have a different type of viewpoint to them. You know, they're really stuck in their own ways. It's really difficult for them to see a different point of view. And I must say, I do find it quite difficult to work with those type of patients in my workplace, because it's like, you know, it's not, you know, it's not necessarily a thing where, oh, you can give them treatment and that's it. No, it's unpicking all those years of, you know, behaving in a certain way, again, going back to the childhood, going back to the learned behavior, going back to perhaps traumatic experiences. So it's really important to bear in mind that there might be an underlying mental health issue, could be anxiety, could be, like I said, PD, that might be causing people to behave in a certain way like this. And I probably should have mentioned this before, but when we're talking about toxic traits, I'm referring to behaviors of toxic, behaviors that are toxic, that have been long-standing, right? That is continuous, that happens for a long period of time. Of course, as human beings, like, we can feel anxious, we can, you know, exhibit some manipulative traits, or, you know, belittle people. Like, that's part of human nature. But when it becomes a constant thing, that's when it's an issue. Okay. And insecurity and low self-esteem. So oftentimes when you are interacting with somebody who has those types of behaviors, most of the time it's not really about you, it's actually about them and how they feel towards themselves. Although in that moment it can be quite hard to think that way, because if you're on the receiving end, you might feel attacked. But if you're the person that's exhibiting certain behaviors like that, then it's quite important to look at, you know, whether there might be something else underlying. So feelings of insecurity, low self-esteem, and a fear of vulnerability can contribute to the development of toxic traits. Individuals might resort to toxic behaviors such as putting people down, seeking power and control as a means of protecting themselves or self-worth. So again, it can be a coping mechanism for a lot of people. It's important to also note that whilst these factors can contribute to the development of toxic traits, they do not excuse or justify harmful behavior, okay? Recognizing the sources of toxic traits can help us understand its origins, but it's important for individuals to take responsibility for their own actions and work towards seeking healthier behaviors or alternatives to that, okay? So in the next slide, we're going to look specifically at unlearning some of these toxic traits. But again, like I said, it's really important to understand that the person themselves, or you yourself, need to make that first step forward in order to unlearn some of these traits. Okay, so unlearning toxic traits is a process. It requires self-reflection, self-awareness, and a commitment to personal growth. It's not going to be easy, depending on how tight the knot has been tied, depending on how long these certain behaviors have been going on for, especially when it's a habit, especially when it's all you know or all the person knows. It's not a quick fix, okay? So let's explore some practical strategies to help you embark on this transformative journey. So first, you start by identifying the toxic traits that you possess. Reflect on your patterns of behavior and their impact on yourself or other people. For example, if you tend to be overly critical of others or yourself, acknowledge this trait and its consequences. Practice self-compassion and forgiveness. So remember that we are all flawed human beings. It's normal to make mistakes, but what matters is the willingness to change and grow. Embrace compassion and allow yourself to learn from past experiences. So it's all about accountability. It's not to say that this person's a bad person or not. We all make mistakes, but once the person or yourself is able to say, okay, right, I think there's an issue there. Let me work on it. Let me find ways to try and, you know, unlearn some of these things that I've known for all my life. seek support from trusted friends and family members or health professionals. They can provide guidance and accountability and a safe space for you to discuss your struggles and progress. So I think, it's really important to be able to seek help in one of those different types of forms. Some people might not have family to turn to, or they might not have friends to turn to. Luckily, we live in a world where there's so much information on the internet. Of course, use discernment when you are looking at certain types of information. Make sure that they are reputable and they're credited. But again, don't be hesitant to reach out, especially when you can feel that you are perhaps having a negative impact on those around you. Or like I said, if you find that there's somebody that you know that has some of these traits, I think it's really important to, of course, tread lightly and, ensure that you're coming across the right way. But the main thing is to create that safe space so that they don't feel like they're judged, so that they can get into that mind space of actually thinking and reflecting and being like, okay, do you know what? Yeah, maybe there might be certain things that I am doing that, might not be quite right. I am willing to sort of talk to you about this. Okay, so it's just more about approaching this with a more empathetic approach, I would say. Also, replacing toxic behaviors with healthier alternatives as well. So for instance, if you tend to be overly critical, practice expressing appreciation and kindness towards yourself and others. I think Dari mentioned something earlier on during the icebreaker. Give yourself positive affirmations. What's really worked for me, and I started this years ago. I remember when I'd be doing my exams, I'd get really nervous, or if I'm about to do something quite big, I'll start, saying quite negative things about myself, like, you can't do it, or why did you sign yourself up for this? So what I started doing was actually, I think I might have gotten it from a Mary Jane show or something like that, but it worked. So I started writing Post-it notes to myself. So maybe I'd go out to my exam, before I'd go to my exam, I'd write a Post-it note saying, Jenny, you've done amazing, don't worry, you will pass. Things like that, so that when I'd come back home, I would have the Post-it notes sitting right there on my bed. And that really, really helped me, because I think, yes, it's important to get support from those around you, but what's most important is that inner voice, how you talk to yourself. If you're not kind to yourself, I don't know how you can expect yourself to be kind to others as well. It's going to come to a point where there's certain traits that you are exhibiting towards yourself will start to seep out towards other people as well, without you even knowing. Also, engage in regular self-care activities that promote mental and emotional well-being. So practicing mindfulness, exercising, doing things that you actually enjoy, so that, you're keeping your mood up. You're not sort of sitting in that sorrow sort of mood all the time, because again, that can impact you negatively. So then how do you support somebody with toxic traits and or mental health difficulties? So here are some examples. So like I mentioned before, maintaining boundaries. So establish and maintain clear boundaries to protect your own mental health as well. Set limits on what you're willing to do, what you're willing to tolerate, and communicate those boundaries assertively but compassionately. It's important to prioritize your mental and emotional well-being whilst providing support. So oftentimes the question I get asked is, as a therapist, how do you take care of your own mental health while you're trying to support other people with your mental health? And this can be applied to anybody. You don't have to be a therapist. I could think of myself as, a friend who's offering somebody advice, who's going through something. But if you're constantly trying to support other people, it can be quite draining, right? So again, it's important to have those boundaries with yourself and just make sure that you're putting yourself first as well, or you're actually acknowledging your own needs. Encourage self-reflection. So encourage the person to engage in introspection. So looking back. Sometimes it's quite difficult to try and look back. So again, going at their pace and not trying to push them too much on like, you know, what happened in your childhood and things like that. Okay. Encourage them to consider some of the underlying reasons for their toxic traits and explore healthier alternatives. Offer non-judgmental listening. So be a non-judgmental listener. I know it's quite hard because, again, in this society, all we do is really judge without us necessarily knowing. But allow that person to express their feelings and concerns openly without fear of harsh judgment. Sometimes, like I said, people with toxic traits, they may have deep-rooted insecurities or unresolved issues that's driving their behavior. So listening, being empathetic can help them feel heard and understood. Provide constructive feedback. So when appropriate, offer constructive feedback on their behavior. Be specific about the impact their actions have on you or others. Focus on the more observable facts rather than making personal attacks. This should not be a personal attack on anybody or yourself. Frame your feedback in a supportive and caring manner. You know that saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, okay? Again, encourage professional help. So in some cases, some traits might be, again, deeply ingrained or linked to underlying mental health issues. So it might be time to seek professional help, such as therapists or counseling, working with trained professionals to help them address certain traits. Also, leading by example as well. Sometimes it's also about the company that you keep. So look at your own interactions and look at the interactions that you're observing amongst other people. Like maybe are you in a friendship where, you know, all of them tend to judge each other a lot? You know, if that's the case, then of course it's no wonder that you've sort of absorbed that type of behavior as well. And again, like I said, practice self-care, and also remember, be realistic and be patient about the pace at which you want to go at. So again, it's not a quick fix. Some of these types of behaviors has taken years to build up, so it's going to take years to try and take them down. So just be quite patient with yourself, be patient with other people as well. Right, so just in terms of continuing with that, so supporting other people is quite important. You know, of course, we're talking about toxic traits at the moment, but this can be applied to other mental health issues, such as depression, anxiety. Offering people a listening ear and creating a safe place is quite important. The one thing I haven't quite mentioned just yet is education. So educating yourself about mental health is really important, because then that allows you to have the right tools, verbal tools, written tools, to support yourself or to support somebody that you know as well. When I was growing up, I didn't really know too much about mental health. I didn't really know too much about, you know, certain behaviors. Because of my training, obviously, I've been privileged to understand, like, you know, how does a person with personality disorder present? How does a person with maybe anxiety present? And it's not to paint everybody with the same brush or all these people with the same brush, but it allows me to sort of be like, oh, okay, you know, this person's been doing this for quite a long time. This is how they've made me feel. Maybe that's something I can address with them. Or looking within myself, you know, there's been times where, I'll be honest, I've been told, Jen, sometimes you're too critical, or you criticize me all the time. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, actually, do you know what? I've done it quite a lot of times. And maybe it might have not come from a negative space in my head, but it's also about understanding how people receive your, you know, what you say to them. You might not feel like it's toxic, but to other people, it might be. So it's also about having that balance and being willing to hear other people. And again, you know, like I said, open dialogue is important, promoting mental health awareness, challenging the societal norms. So, you know, we spoke about the societal pressures. So again, that's one of the main roots of why people exhibit toxic behaviors is because of all the societal pressures, whether that's toxic masculinity, the pressure to have, you know, a great job, a great salary, take care of your family. There's so much pressure on us, especially as young people. So it's just really important to not take that to heart. And I know it's quite difficult, but again, it's about surrounding yourself with the right people who you're able to talk to about this and share, you know, some of your concerns and things like that. Okay. So in conclusion, we have explored the impact of toxic traits on mental health. I hope you've learned how to recognize and unlearn some of these traits and discussed ways to assist others on this journey. Remember, again, unlearning toxic traits is a continuous process. It requires self-reflection, self-awareness, and commitment as well. But also, I would also like to add that even if you're on this journey of unlearning some of these toxic traits and you know, you're doing really well, you've been trying for a couple of weeks, and then, you know, maybe you slipped for like a moment or so, don't be so harsh on yourself, get back and continue the journey. I think it's also quite important to know that it's not a quick fix. It's not something that, okay, let me follow these couple of steps and all of a sudden I'm just going to be a perfect human being. No, we're human beings for a reason. Like, we have our flaws, but the more we try to better ourselves, the more that we can be better to other people as well. So hopefully by implementing some of these strategies, we can be patient with ourselves, we can create positive change in our lives and the lives of others around us as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jenny, for that wonderful presentation. And it's so exciting and it's very funny. While you're presenting, and you know, there's some that you mentioned here and there, and I'm like, oh, really? I'm very guilty of some of these things, and I'm happy that going from here, I'm going to try and work on some of these toxic traits, because some of us are termed as there are people you find that we call them perfectionists. They're always criticizing others, always blaming others, you know, and all of that. These things may not look bad, but they're actually bad because they actually affect the other person. Because if you're constantly criticizing me about something, I will begin to think that you're just trying to like pick on me and, you know, and all of that. But thank you so much for this session. It was straightforward. It was really enlightening and educative. And it's now time for our questions and answers. And I'm going to be taking some questions. I've already seen some questions in the chat box. So I'm going to start from there. But if you want to like unmute your mic and ask a question, just use the emoji to raise your hand and we're going to let you speak. But I would start with the first question I can see here. Someone was asking, he said, okay, he introduced himself. He said, I am Ikeoku Bennett in Indoka. I'm bisexual man leading an LGBTQ organization. From what you have said so far, can it be said that suppression and criminalization of the innocent queer persons who have done nothing to offend others are results of toxic traits, behaviors passed down from generations? That's the first question, Jenny.
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking that question. Absolutely. I think, you know, as I mentioned, we've got generations and generations of societal norms that has been passed down. And when it comes to, you know, it's affecting certain demographics or certain people as well, it can be quite difficult for the world, I would say in general, but more specifically certain parts of the world. So let's say, I mean, I'm Nigerian as well. So I understand that even then when it comes to mental health, when it comes to areas where, you know, in the past, it would never have been accepted and it might still not be accepted now, it's quite difficult to change those minds. And a lot of it, again, comes from, you know, maybe how they viewed a man to be or how they viewed a woman to be, or, you know, certain people not being able to shake that thought of, do you know what, we're all different. We all like different people who have different experiences, who express ourselves in different ways. So absolutely, I think it's a generational thing. And, you know, I see a huge difference, right, between people who, you know, are much of the older generation, and those who are of, you know, our generation, and their thinking and what they accept and what they don't accept is very, very much based on the fact that, you know, they have different cultural norms and societal expectations that unfortunately has still trickled down to our society. So absolutely, I think that would be the case.
Okay, thank you, Jenny, for explaining that. The next question is from Michelle. Michelle is asking, is it gaslighting when someone responds to you bringing up their repeated misbehavior by bringing up something else you've done in the past? Like it automatically absolves them from the wrong they just did, or when they start to complain and blame you for disrupting the peace and causing issues for confronting them about their actions?
Yeah, if somebody keeps on bringing up things from the past, and let's say, I mean, I'm guessing you might have felt that it was addressed already. You might have apologized, or you might have sat down with that person to talk things through, but they keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up. Then there's two things. The first thing, clearly that person hasn't gotten over it. And, you know, depending on what the situation is and who's really at fault, or if it's both of you's at fault, if that person's now using that past experience to almost like weaponize that against you, then it can be a form of gaslighting, especially if, you know, you've both agreed at some point in time that, you know, yes, I've done wrong, or, you know, I don't know what the situation is, but usually, especially in friendships, for example, like, you know, we've had falling outs in my friendship groups, and, you know, I might think everything's cool, but then all of a sudden, a year or two down the line, the same thing comes back up, and I'm like, what, wait a minute, like, did we not address this? So again, if this is happening over and over again, and like I said, they're using this against you, they're using this to maybe make you feel guilty, then yes, it can be a form of gaslighting, but it would heavily depend on, you know, what it is, and if that person hasn't necessarily healed from that situation.
Okay, thank you so much, Jenny. Do we have anyone in the audience that would want to ask a question? You can just put up your hands and we'll let you unmute your mic and let you speak. Any questions? And after the question and answers, we'll be going into the breakout rooms. The way we do the breakout rooms, we're going to be put in different rooms. We're going to be broken into smaller groups. Then we'll go into a room and we'll discuss further before we come back and round up. So, okay. Michelle, since you've asked the question before, let me go with Tim first before you, Michelle. Tim, you can unmute your mic and speak, please. If you cannot unmute, can someone unmute him, please?
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon.
Okay. Jenny, I've enjoyed every part of your discussion so far. I just got a question. You know, the usual understanding. I don't understand that this I'm sorry, give me a second. Okay. I don't understand that this meeting is about how we can deal with toxic traits if we are the toxic one, but how do we deal if others are the toxic one? Because the general knowledge of dealing with these people is we cut them off thoroughly. And I feel like somehow, these people they might not know better than we. They might not know what their actions are actually toxic. They might, you know, like the causes you mentioned, they might just have been, you know, trained that way or made to understand things that way. How do we deal with people that are like this?
So yes, I would say it is quite difficult, especially, you know, if we're talking about people who have exhibited those behaviors for a long period of time. The first thing I would say is to create that open dialogue. It can just be like in a general conversation, or, you know, sometimes it's also about like how you approach certain things. So I could be talking to, let's say, my parents, like, you know, they've grown up in Nigeria, they might behaving in a certain way that's affecting me mentally. Of course, I wouldn't want to be disrespectful. I wouldn't want to, sort of come across in a way that's, that comes across as maybe challenging and all that kind of stuff. But it's quite important to create that space where I can start it off with maybe a general conversation around like, look, I noticed that this is a certain way that you behave. This is how it makes me feel. And you know what? The other person, they might disagree. But I think that's also, it's a great starting point as well. Like, let them disagree. As long as you're approaching this in a kind and nice manner. I often find that, and again, I talk to this with my groups and some of my patients, like when we're trying to challenge somebody, sometimes we might raise our voice, we might come across as like really attacking them. But when you'll find that when you speak to somebody really softly, even if it's about something that, might be quite triggering and whatnot, but if you speak to them quite softly in a nice manner, you'll find that automatically, without them even thinking, they'll start to come on your level as well. They'll start to be like, okay, I don't really agree with that, but they won't necessarily challenge it in a way that's really toxic or anything like that. So I think it's more about your approach, I would say, Tim. And it's also about, giving them the space and taking your time with it. It might just be more than one conversation. Maybe you have to have this conversation over a series of weeks and months. And yes, it requires patience, but if you're willing to help that person, if you're willing to help the person see from your point of view, then I think it's worth it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I hope your question has been answered though. Michelle was putting up her hand. You've changed your mind? And I saw Vera. Okay, I will ask a question from the chat box. Someone asked that, can you please explain more about grandiosing? I hope I got that question right, that pronunciation.
Grandiosing.
Yeah.
Like maybe grandiose behavior. So yeah. So when somebody exhibits a grandiose behavior, they might maybe over exaggerate a certain situation. So for example, let me think about some of my PD patients. So they might for example, they might come into a room and think, do you know what? I'm the oldest person here. You all need to respect me. This is my world. This is, it's very much exaggerated. And it's a fine line between like somebody who's really in their own world, and is really unable to hear or see anybody's point of view. So that's what I mean by like a grandiose type of behavior. So it's very much exaggerated, something that might seem very small to you, to them, they've blown it out of proportion. So that would be hopefully my best example that I can give you.
Okay, very well understood. Thank you, Jenny. So Michelle's hand is up. Michelle, you can unmute your mic and speak. I think after Michelle will be going into the breakout rooms. I don't know if we've exhausted our 20 minutes, but I think so. But Michelle, please unmute your mic and speak. Can someone unmute her, please? Okay, you can speak now, Michelle.
Hi.
Okay, hi, Michelle. I think her network is bad.
Maybe she can write the question in the chat.
Yeah, maybe. Michelle, if you can hear us, please write down your question. Your network is bad, Michelle. Michelle, you have to write your question in the chat box. Okay, the last person now, Mr. Ben, please go ahead. Okay, Michelle is asking, is it gaslighting when I confront someone by encountering exact scenarios of what they did and how it made me feel? And then they go on to say, oh, so you are saying I'm a terrible person. Am I the worst, etc.? And also say you are mean.
No, it's not gaslighting if you're letting somebody know how you feel and letting them know the scenario in which they made you feel a certain type of way. Gaslighting is more so about putting somebody down and almost making them feel that they're lying or, that never happened. So as long as you're not coming from that point of view where you're trying to distort somebody's reality of what actually happened, I wouldn't necessarily say that's gaslighting. But then on the flip side, if you are letting somebody know when they've done you wrong and how they've made you feel, and they're sort of coming at you and trying to guilt trip you by saying, oh, so, does that mean I'm a bad person and all that kind of stuff, then yeah, that in itself can be a form of gaslighting from their end, where they're trying to make you feel bad for highlighting something that's gone wrong or something that's, hurt you. So yeah, sometimes people can come from a point of, it's a point of, trying to be defensive, because they can't quite comprehend or believe that this actually happened. Or another thing, and I think I mentioned this before, it's, somebody might behave in a certain way or a certain situation might happen, but they themselves might not feel like it's a bad thing. And again, it's quite difficult because that's something, again, that's happened to me, whereas, I've maybe communicated something in a way that if somebody communicated that to me, I'll be fine, I'm happy with that. But it's also about understanding that just because you're fine with a certain way of doing things or a certain way of somebody speaking to you doesn't mean that somebody else might be. So it's trying to get that across to that person, Michelle. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Asad, is that Diary? We have so many. Yeah, I think it's Diary.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So thank you so much, Jenny. So my question more is on right. So I mean, ever since I joined this space, which is the mental health space, I've had to talk to a couple of people, even me myself, observing certain situations and all of those things. And I've seen situations where people exhibit certain toxic traits that seems like their parents also have this. So I think my question now is, based on your own experience, do you think toxic traits are genetic? Do you think it's possible for people to exhibit toxic traits that they most likely picked from their parents? I think that's the first question. And secondly, what can people do about it intentionally, right? Because, in this part of the world, we like to spiritualize everything. Where people say, like, oh, God forbid, I'm not going to be my father, I'm not going to be my mother. But first of all, first question is it true genetics, where it seems like there's nothing you can do, you can't change it? And then is there anything one can do to intentionally curb this toxic trait?
Yeah. So no, toxic traits aren't genetic. You can be predisposed to toxic traits or certain types of behaviors that are negative by the influences around you. So, I spoke about childhood experiences, psychological factors as well. So I would say a lot of the time, it's more so a generational thing. So, how somebody's treated their children can be passed down. So it's quite tricky, but definitely not genetic. And the reason why I say this is because so you can have, let's say, twins, for example, right? Same mother, same father, but different households. Maybe they were separated at birth and whatnot. Somebody could be brought up in a loving, caring home where communication is open and, it's all fluffy and all that kind of stuff. And then somebody can be brought up in a really toxic environment and, there's a lot of shouting, there's a lot of belittling, and two of those supposedly, the same person, genetically the same, can all turn out really differently. So it's more so about the environment. It's more so about the psychological aspects between parents, between friends, between families. With the genetic factors, that there is a debate, especially when it comes to mental health, that some people are maybe more likely to be more PD, so have personality disorder. They're more likely to be more anxious. They're more likely to be all that kind of stuff. Yes, that could happen, but it's more so around the triggers. So the triggers for one person could be childhood, it could be a traumatic event, it could be all those type of things. So it's a combination. It's really complex. We're really complex as human beings, I would say. And what was your second question? Sorry.
So like steps or strategies for people to intentionally, what's it called? Intentionally stop these toxic traits they might have gotten as a result of being in that family case, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I think I'm just gonna add one more question. So, for example, I have a friend where, so like in the Yoruba kingdom, right? Some people insulting can be like play. Do you get what I'm saying? Like the way they insult you. And you know, in the modern culture, like that's not allowed. So I have a friend where for her, like she's always insulting, but she's playing, like it's a joke. Do you get? And these insults, when you interpret them in English, like they're really heavy. You get what I'm saying? And it's just because like growing up, that's what, you know, parents would insult each other. And so it's something they picked up. It's usually very common in that particular tribes. But I'm just giving that kind of example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. It's important to know like what your boundaries are. Yes, there are some situations where you can banter and you can say certain things, like even with friends, like, you know, we can we can insult each other, but I'm not necessarily going to take it to heart because I know that's, you know, that's the type of relationship we have. And also within that, there's certain boundaries. So we know not to take a step too far. We're not going to insult each other's parents or something like that, right? But let's say for somebody, I'm trying to think of like a more realistic scenario, like for a lot of people who might be in a toxic environment that they can't get out of. So let's say at work, you know, they've got supposedly a good job, good money, but maybe their manager is really toxic or the people around them. And it's easier said than done for me to be like, oh, just hop and leave and find a different job, right? So it's really important to identify like, you know, these things are happening, or whether that's yourself that's projecting it onto other people. Like I said, seek help, whether that's through friends that you can trust or a professional. But I also would say, you know, in the world we live in now, especially with the internet, as long as we use discernment, there's so many resources in terms of, you know, how to have like positive affirmations, looking at the type of person you are, like who do you want to become, what kind of goals do you have? Is your goal to become this bitter, you know, person, or do you want to actually make an impact? Do you want to be kind to other people? So it's also about, you know, what you're consuming. It can be in the form of books. What kind of shows are you watching? What kind of music are you listening to? So there's so many different ways that you can try and internalize much more positive behavior in yourself, and you can also recommend that to other people. There's so many self-help books, there's so many articles, there's so much positive music out there, and I really do believe that if you surround yourself by a lot of this positivity and also doing the groundwork by reading, research, and educating as well around these types of behaviors and also mental health issues too, you can really, over the months and years, start to equip yourself with much more positive skills that you can start to pass down to your friends, your child, your family. Like I do feel like we are in a much better place now in society. Of course, there are certain elements, like there's, you know, certain countries where they still need to catch up, but us, you know, people in this room as a generation, the fact that you're already here wanting to learn, wanting to better yourselves or support people around you, that's a massive step already. And I can already tell like our next generations, they're going to be much better off for that. So I would say those are the things that you can do practically in order to I don't want to say get rid, but maybe reduce some of those toxic traits over time. So again, I'm trying to let people know that it's not necessarily realistic to just switch that off. It takes time, it takes patience, and it takes practice.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny. One of the key things you just said is people can learn this toxic behavior. So we need to understand that while we go about doing our day-to-day activities, people are learning especially when you're around children or people that look up to you. We need to know that they're learning whatever that we're doing. So we need to look in within, and we tell ourselves today that we don't want to be the reason why someone is toxic. For some of you, it's the way you behave towards someone. I spoke to someone recently and she told me that I didn't used to be a very toxic person. I'm now a bitter person. I'm now an angry person, and it's because of this person, because of the relationship she was in. So we need to check ourselves and work on ourselves. That way we can make the next person a better person, and the next person will be a better person. So it's now time for our breakout session. We'll further discuss whatever we're discussing. Our dear speaker is going to have the opportunity to go into every breakout room. So while she's there, I know we still have some questions in the chat box. So you can quickly, once you see her, just grab and ask her your questions sharp in the breakout rooms, so that she can just answer you before we come back. Yeah, Rachel, we're ready to go into the breakout rooms. So we see you